is that he has the right, of course, to bring his culture with him or her, but relevant once you decide to settle in a place should be the law of the land of that country where you settle. Political framework is one thing, belief, religion, culture should be ranking below what is the basic law of the Constitution and the form of the social contract that reigns in that country. There will always be compromises, but I think that is the principle that we should stipulate coming from a Western background, having gone through the period of Enlightenment, where tolerance has come out as the main principle of existing side by side, or even becoming and discovering the commonalities among us. And tolerance means that the borderline, or the tolerance should stop where you are confronted with intolerance on the other side that disputes the right of you to be tolerant towards others. It should not be, you should not accept people who come to you as immigrants and guests and say, well, wait a minute, you may have lived here for so many years and you may be proud of this or that, but now the rules will be as we as immigrants would like to have them. And this, to my knowledge, has actually never happened in the United States. The immigration to this country has been that of people willing to immerse in what they found and not imposing anything on what they found. And then there was obviously a great advantage of this country, and that was the immense space. We mentioned that, and that, I think, also explains the forms of religious practice that have developed in this country. Just to give that as one example, if you were dissatisfied with the way your pastor interpreted the gospel, and you felt encouraged to do something similar, you could, in practice, simply move 10 miles out to the next place and found your own church and start your own denomination. This has been the great experience of this country, which explains many things that we see today, and which in the genesis of the peoples in Europe has been quite different. And I think when we talk about cultural differences between Europeans and Americans, this is some area where we have to be very conscious of where we come from and how we see things and how we interpret things. And we'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you. And so, you know a little bit about my story, but I can maybe tell you a little more about what the history of my transatlantic upbringing. So my dad was born on a farm in Asia, Minnesota, not too far from here. Now I can hear. Okay. And he didn't go to Germany with the military. He got a Fulbright scholarship after having been in the Missouri Synod in St. Louis, Indiana, and ended up in Münster, Germany, where he studied theology and became a student pastor in the 68ers, and those were mentioned before. So he married and got immersed in German theology and European intellectualism, never forgetting though the upbringing that he's had in the American academic background as well. So him and my mom have created this like I was born in a parsonage, so I was a pastor's daughter. My mother, who was born to my grandfather, who refused to take the oath on Hitler and lost his scholarship, and then served on both the Western and the Eastern Front, and made it his life's work to avoid to ever have war again on German premises. So these two people, German Americans, have raised a family that was always like open to everyone. We lived in a big parsonage. We had people from all over the world, from Africa, from Eastern Europe, because my dad was also alleged to be a socialist, a communist, and the American communist. It's very funny. So I have always been around multiple cultures, and the two main cultures, so the German and the American, are something that I'm still like trying to figure out, because we're very much alike. We benefited so much from our mutual relationship, but yet, as I've been living in the U.S. again for my first year again, there are so many things that I don't understand about the second country that is my home, right? And there's so many cultural differences, interpretation differences, historical differences, and I became a political scientist and a comparative political scientist for good reason, I guess. It's because I always wanted to understand what makes us different and why do we think of politics, democracy, the way we live, the common good, why do we do things differently, right? And so part of it is religion, part of it is the social cultural background, part of it is our political institutions that differ. So the United States has a very different institutional setup than most of the European countries. So I think that's why I wanted to become a teacher and an academic, is to really understand why we are different and communicate how we are different so that we can build things together and actually learn from each other. Because the reason I came and left German academia was for the United States is because I can do nonlinear things here. I can try myself at different things, whereas in Germany you kind of go a straight path. So that's the one thing I've always appreciated being a citizen of two worlds, basically, is that I can benefit more if I look at both sides of the Atlantic. And I think I'm a little afraid that we're not having that conversation anymore transatlantically, or politics have become so ideological that we can't have those conversations, and I think they're crucial for us to actually like create a better world for all of us. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you very much. My dear friends, I'm first asking for your excuse that my English is not very good, but I try to do my best and explain a little bit what I am doing. I said to Yuvi, well, I'm not related to Holocaust, and I'm not related to, just refugees, but there is a change in Germany going on in these years, and I am in some way involved in this. So after the change in 1990, we had a big immigration in Germany, and this immigration came from East. And as at that time, 1992, I was asked by the ambassador of Bulgaria whether I would be prepared to involve time and also means and investment into that time country, Bulgaria. And then I asked first my wife, Petra, and said to her, this was in 1992, well, are we prepared to engage ourselves in Bulgaria? And she said, yes, we have to do it, because what we experienced in 1990, the change in Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate, and you know everything about this, this was so immensely important for us that, and it was changing our lives so much that we said we have to do something, contribution in that change in our country, of course, in Europe and also in the world. And so the government of Bulgaria made me first to Consul of Hamburg and Bremen, and then afterwards to Schleswig-Holstein and Lower Saxony, 4 states for big states in northern Germany. I'm representing about a quarter of the German population and just a quarter of the immigration from Bulgaria, which was very, very strongly growing at the time. We have in Hamburg about 10,000 Bulgarians living, and in my district, in my consular area, 45 to 50,000 Bulgarians. No refugees, of course, because Bulgaria is related to the European Union and became member of the European Union 10 years before, and we have in the European Union free migration, so that people looking for work or without the desire to get a job, they can travel and they can have, without any control, they have free possibility to migrate. So we had, after, say, 1990, young Bulgarians coming. Bulgaria was a very strong communist country, very strong. And they came after 1992, and they applied for study permit, and they were very successful at universities, and we have quite a lot of important universities in northern Germany. And after they finished their studies successfully, they of course got married and decided to live in the area where they now are living, and then they got a job, no problem, very successfully. The Bulgarians are quite intelligent and very, very well sophisticated, and they got their jobs, and they founded families, and they got children, and now we have thousands of young Bulgarian children living in northern Germany. And we said, this was about 10, 12 years ago, we said, well, we have to do something for the children. And you may ask, what? I tell you, these children born in Germany, they are Germans. They become Germans after their birth. They go to the German kindergarten, they go to the German school. It's not in their own lives. They are forced to attend the German Volksschule, elementary school, and the kids speak German, no Bulgarian, but the parents speak Bulgarian. And so there is a gap between what the kids' situation and future is and what is the situation of the parents. And so we decided it is necessary to have a Bulgarian school. And so we founded a Bulgarian school in Hamburg 12 years ago, and on Saturday they go to school in the morning, up in the afternoon on Saturday, and they learn Bulgarian language, history, culture, and also a little bit religion if they want. And this makes it possible that the family find the identity, and what for me is very important, my wife and me, we are the grandparents, that kids in Germany from the Bulgarian couples, that they can speak to the grandparents in Plovdiv, in Sofia, in Varna, and because the families go, of course, at summertime, also for Christmas, go home, and the kids in Germany, they have, the grandparents have a chance to talk and speak to one another. This is one thing, what is very successful, is so we have a school, a Bulgarian school, weekend in Hamburg, in Bremen, and in Hanover. This is a new development, and we have engagement of the parents, they have to pay for it, and we have also limited contribution of the Bulgarian Ministry for Education. This is the one thing. And second is the denomination is different. They are Orthodox Christians, Bulgarian Orthodox Lutheran. They have their own church in their country. And this is also very important for these, because they have their own holy mission, Heilige Mission, on Sunday, and we hired a priest, a young priest. We have in Hamburg a 38-year-old Bulgarian Orthodox priest, and he is just taking care for the service on Sunday, but he is also rendering all services what is necessary for baptizing, for managing, and everything. This is the second, and I'm sometimes not very sure what is more important, the service or the meeting after the service. And they have, after the service, they have, some cake, and they have some coffee or so, and it takes 2 or 3 hours every Sunday after the service. This is the second mean of introduction. And third, I think the Bulgarians are very, very different to Germans. I don't know whether you understand what is Volkstanz. This is dancing. Can you translate it?
Folk dance.
Volkstanz, so you can understand what I mean. The Volkstanz is very, very important for Bulgarians, because they were belonging 500 years to the Ottoman Empire. And this ended, I mentioned one word this morning, in 1878, and they became independent again. But after that 500 years belonging to the Turkish Ottoman Empire, they were still Bulgarians. I don't know what would happen in our country if Eastern Germany would be 500 years German democratic, 500 years German democratic republic. Change. But in Bulgaria, no change. And this is, I think, to explain with the cultural identity of Bulgarians, and Volksdance is one way of preserving the identity. The other thing is singing, the art and the culture. And this is what we very strongly force, that the Bulgarian identity is still accepted and is still active in Hamburg. They dance and they sing, and they have the paintings and painting exhibitions and so on. And this is due to the long history, and we have in this field very good experiences, and the Bulgarians integrate fantastically in Hamburg, in Bremen, in Lower Saxony, and in Schleswig-Holstein. And we are very, very happy. The Bulgarians are not refugees, they are immigrants. They can come from Bulgaria to Germany because of the trend and the desire to have a better life than they have in their country, Bulgaria. This causes, of course, a big brain drain in Bulgaria. Many Bulgarians live now in Germany, more than 250,000, and there are also Bulgarians living in Spain, and I think some perhaps also in the States. I don't know exactly what is going on there. But Germany is very thankful and proud for this immigration. We have many problems with migration. We are not talking about refugees, and This is what we are supporting very much, and we have a strong report, the strong support of the government and what is doing. I can mention that I am not working because I'm being paid. I am on an honorary basis working for Bulgaria. I am not employed by the Bulgarian and not paid by the Bulgarian government. It is just our identity, our desire to help become more peaceful migration in Europe and help in this way. It's very limited, but maybe this was interesting for you as an example. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so far. Many aspects already that came up. So I want to find whether in the audience somewhere is who would like to say something, mention something, ask something. So, okay, I can hand that over to you.
For Dr. Kaiser. The Bulgarian Chancellor said he's not talking about refugees, and you're not really talking about refugees either with your association with the students and the Silicon Valley people. They're all highly educated people. How do you see handling the different levels, the highly educated and then the refugees that would be more unskilled type situation?
Well, that's not completely accurate. Oh, sorry. I have a big voice, but I better use a mic. That's not totally accurate. A lot of the so-called refugees are very skilled, very educated people who bring talent and knowledge with them. The distinction between refugees and immigrants is somewhat immaterial for a lot of business people. We're looking at the human labor force and the skill sets they have. So that distinction isn't terribly relevant, at least not here. But we're seeing software programmers from India, medical design technicians from France, marketing people from Africa. They're all over the place. And we don't really care so much as long as they have skills to contribute or educational levels or they can attain the skills needed. So we don't worry as much about, when I see a student in my class, I know that he or she comes from another country. Is she an immigrant or a refugee is kind of irrelevant to me. I'm looking at the skill level she has, the ability to pick up new skills, the desire to be here, the desire to contribute to the economy. And they have a tremendous thirst. That's why it's so much fun to work with immigrants / refugees, I don't know how you call them, but to work with foreign students coming in, they have a tremendous ambition and desire to get ahead. And sometimes we forget that if we've been born and raised here, we take it for granted that we had these opportunities here. It's not taken for granted by them. And I think back to my mother, who sacrificed everything to come here as a single mother with a little child on a steamship. And it was the same kind of mentality. So whenever I get a little blasé about what we have here, I think back to her. And it was not, she was not blasé about that. It was a tremendous challenge, a lot of work, but an opportunity, and it paid off for her and for me both.
Let me just add something. I think migrants is the very general term. And under migrants you have immigrants looking from the country where they come to, and immigrants meaning people, the country where they come from. But within the group of migrants, you have all sorts of different groups for the reasons of war, refugees who would have a certain right under the Geneva Refugee Convention, of political asylum seekers, or people who come due to religious persecution. Once they move from one place, one country to another, they are migrants. And so refugees is just a subcategory of migrants. And I mean, for the purpose of discussing about people, traffic or movement from country to country, we should, just as a general term, speak of migrants. And then if we want to specify whether there's a particular reason for this migration, then we can use other terms.
Well, I agree with you that we need to look at people as people, not as an immigrant, a refugee, a migrant. We need to look for their skills. But I think one of the problems that I work with international students who are preparing for a university, I taught English to them, and one of the big problems they have is immigration, their immigration status. Their visa status is extremely important to them. Some of those students want to continue on in working in the United States, and it's very, very difficult, getting more difficult for them to get the appropriate visa, the H-1B visa to continue. I think this is something we need to look at.
You're absolutely right, and under the current administration, H-1Bs are being cut back, and the technology companies, it's interesting to watch the CEOs in Silicon Valley, they're terrified. Because if you walk around Silicon Valley at these high-tech firms, look at the faces there. You're seeing a lot more Asian and foreign faces than you are seeing white faces. They need that labor pool. And if the H-1B visa program gets cut back, which apparently they want to cut back, they being the administration, that's difficult for us. I would add that labels like immigrant, refugee, those are political labels. What defines one versus the other is kind of irrelevant to the business community. That's something that politicians can worry about, but we really don't care. By saying we, I mean business people. We want to see the people who come in who want to be here, who have something to contribute, who are willing to work hard, and that defines virtually all of them. And they're a phenomenal resource. If we cut back on this immigrant population or refugee population, we're hurting ourselves economically and badly, especially in the high-tech areas.
Something else?
I would just like to add to that a lot of people that come, I mean, I'm German, so the German refugee crisis, or the people, I don't even want to call it a crisis, is something that, where a lot of questions like that, there are uneducated people among that, and we can't make it, we have to make it a people question, not necessarily only a labor force, what can you contribute question. I think, like politically, like we're going to continue to have the challenge that people will be coming to our doors more frequently, and we have to find questions and solutions to that, and we need to be talking about it and being respectful or careful with the terms we use and be considerate of the problems that entails, both for the countries that receive that the refugees come to, or the immigrants come to, or where migration happens to. So I'm a little concerned that since I've been in the US, is that the whole refugee problem as I've experienced it when I was still in Germany, when I was like getting stuff together and helping to welcome refugees to Germany. Like there's a different attitude about refugees and political, like here in the US, and we're not as welcoming as we should be, given that the US is usually a country that has had the huddled masses, right, that came to its doors. So I think making it only a labor issue is a little bit short. It's legitimate, and we have to think about what people can contribute, but there's a whole human rights discourse attached to it as well, and it cannot be neglected. That's just the point I would like to add to that. Brings us back to Holocaust education and multiculturalism, and like who do we not want to welcome at our doors, and who do we send away? And if you look at that right now, there are certain countries that we do send away, and we don't have really good reasons for that. At least we need to be very clear about what it is we're doing.
Well, I think everything is said, and I would like, of course, to confirm that it is not only the migrants, immigration of Bulgarians, as an example, coming to Germany with high education, with high ambitions. There are also, in the last years, people migrating to Germany who have a bad economical situation in the country and poor people, and they have problems, of course, if they don't speak any German, it's very, very difficult, and many of them have to go back. But nevertheless, the situation in Germany now is that the need is very big for people for the labor market. The market is very, very limited, and the number of people prepared to get a job is very, very limited, and it's necessary to have more labor, educated labor, immigrating to the country. But after that, I'm forced to say one thing about the country Bulgaria. It may be for you not so interesting. Bulgaria, where it is in the southeast of Europe, and it's just close to Turkey, and it is a little bit grey what you think about that country, not very attractive. But this is completely wrong, because Bulgaria is a country with, well, of course, the oldest culture worldwide. In Varna, at the Chernomore, it's Black Sea, there is a big museum, and yet there you can see the oldest gold of the humanity. The oldest gold of the humanity is 6,500 years old. At that time, the Thracians, living in the area of the today's Bulgaria, the Thracians were able to win the ore from the mountains, the copper ore, and this is all the time, up to now, also in these days, is connected, is coming with gold. And the Thracians, in that area of Bulgaria, living 6,500 years ago, they dig the gold, and they made artifacts and wonderful tomb additions, for the chiefs of the tribes dying, and they found it, and they have one of a few of the 10,000 hidden monuments are open now, and this gold you can see, and I can, as a very much engaged Bulgarian, I can say, go there, see Bulgaria, and see the oldest gold of the humanity. This is older than the oldest pyramids in Egypt and in other areas of the world. I've been in China and South America. This is great. Wonderful country. Don't forget Bulgaria. Thank you.
All right.
You've sold me on Bulgaria. I want to stop in and visit. It sounds like a beautiful country. I want to speak from the heart. This country has given me a great deal. A great deal. Most of us are either immigrants or first generation. And we believe we've had a tremendous privilege. We're being encouraged at this time in our history to be prejudiced. Those of us who have been blessed by this country will not allow that. And I want all of you who are visitors with us now to know that you are greeted, and it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for participating.
Any more questions for the panel? Ken. Okay.
Hi, I want to keep it short because I don't want to talk too much of personal things. But when I came to the U.S., my father was hired by the U.S. Air Force under a program called Operation Paperclip, which was a program of the U.S. government to bring German scientists and engineers over here so that they wouldn't get taken by the Russians or somewhere else. So it was a Cold War activity. And so some of my father's former colleagues wound up in Russia, some in France, some in England, some in the US. And as far as I know, they all went back home, except the ones who came over here, who liked it so much and recruited others, including my father. So I went to American high school in Dayton, Ohio, which you know something about. And I must say, I was completely accepted. There was no discrimination against us Germans. There were quite a few of us. And one can only speculate why this was. Maybe it was because we were all on the other side of Russia. Or maybe some of my classmates said, maybe it is because as military children, we moved around a lot, so we can appreciate you having, having to move around. Of all the schools I ever attended, like in Germany, during war years, we went from one place to another. I never felt as comfortable as I did my 2 years in high school in the US. And my sister, who was in a similar situation, she feels exactly the same way. And I'm glad I was able to tell that to my former classmates, who of course mostly have died by now. Anyway, thank you.
I would like to, if I may, get us back, and that leads nicely over to the question of identity. I identify myself as such and such, and I'm being identified as somebody by others as such and such. These are two components of identity which are not necessarily identical. They may completely differ. And identity is also defined by the general political context, as one can interpret from some of the remarks that have been made in the audience. And let's just come back to the amazing story that Peter Lübrecht told us before lunch, and the brief remarks that he made about how the German identity was affected by the outbreak of World War II. We can go back to World War I. I will be in Kansas City next week participating in the national commemoration of the United States entry into World War I on the 6th of April, 1917. And we all know, or we will hear tomorrow, maybe in the context of that discussion, more about how that affected how Germans felt in this country. We need not only take the example of Germans, we can take Japanese, how they were treated in World War II, because their identity as Japanese Americans, as German Americans, was affected by the hostility that was driven not by themselves, but by the policies in their countries of origin. So a part of the identity question is, and that's the main point I want to make, to be seen against the global context in which migration has happened and in which migrant people are being seen in a certain situation in the countries where they are. So, in this country, at the moment, the Muslim population, although it is relatively only a quarter of the Muslim population in Germany, we have 3 million, roughly, Turkish Muslims, the United States with a population of 82 million, the United States with a population of 320 million has only 3 million Muslims. They are being seen as potential terrorists. I hope I'm not stepping on the foot of anybody in the room. It's just how we hear things being voiced in Washington, D.C. And it's not a criticism, it's just a statement of fact from a German diplomat. And it's so obvious. So the point I want to make is there is a differentiation that we have to make, certainly between the migrant issue and some aspects of migration connected with it. And it is very easy, it appears, to play with prejudices in any society and to say, well, you know, this thing has happened and this guy was a Muslim, and this has happened and we know we are fighting ISIS in the Middle East, and so just the potential danger is such that we should not take in these guys. One of the differences that we have between Germany, the German government, and the American government, the US administration at the moment, is also about how to treat the global migration crisis. You know how the current president has criticized the German chancellor during the election campaign for the stance that Angela Merkel has taken with regard to the refugee crisis in Europe. She has adopted a very open-minded, very humanitarian approach, which led to 1 million people coming just in 1 year. Not all of them will eventually have status as refugees or political asylum seekers. Maybe 300,000, 400,000 will not be recognized as legitimate migrants for that reason, and which may mean that they are repatriated. But the general attitude that was shown has produced a lot of goodwill around the world for the German position. And yes, we have seen terrorist attacks in Ansbach and Würzburg and in Berlin, the most severe, with 12 people killed. But the amazing thing to me seems to be that this has not led to a reaction of outrage about Angela Merkel letting all these terrorists in. No, the German people have taken this with a remarkable calm, like the British. Keep calm and collected and carry on. And they know exactly that the main aim of terrorists is not to kill 1, 10, 20 people. The main aim of terrorists is to destroy our way of life. And I think among the people that we can learn from, the Israelis are exemplary, who have lived with terrorism on their territory since the existence of the state. And you can simply combat terrorism by not giving in to this threat. If you do a proper risk analysis, then you should not get into your car and drive to work. You should not do any job in the house. You should not walk outside in the thunderstorm, because the likelihood of being killed is far greater than being killed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, be it on the German Christkindl market in Berlin or taking a train between Würzburg and whatever place. And the point I want to make is that it seems to be very easy for, let me call them demagogues, who actually, in my humble opinion, in a way play the game of terrorists to sow further fear by stigmatizing a whole group of people for the simple reason that, yes, among them, like among Christians who take out a gun at Fort Lauderdale Airport, somebody may be crazy or determined to just kill innocent people. And I think what we can learn from these experiences, from these global experiences, and looking back at stigmatization of certain population groups simply because they got caught in a global context, it affects their identities, how they see themselves, how they will eventually defend themselves against this stigmatization, how they react to this. And we have to be very careful not to drive people outside of our society by being too general. We should be less general and more generous.
I think I would like to add a point to that, because I think a lot of the discussions we're having are based on emotions and not on rational analysis and the fear we have, and I think that's human, because we as humans, we like to assemble around people that are like us, right? That are speaking our own language, that academics is one thing. I love to be around academics because I can talk to them and it's in my in-group. So my neighborhood is my in-group, Germany is my in-group. So when I go somewhere else where I'm unfamiliar, fear is a normal human reaction. But I think what we have to do in politics and in our societies is like to actually acknowledge that fear and work with that fear, because what we feel is normal, but we have to overcome it because we are modern, beings. We are beyond that. We are very advanced in our thinking. We do have enlightenment and everything under our back, so we can approach that. And I think I found that I now live in Minneapolis in a multicultural setting that I have not experienced in Germany, because we're not that Germany is has diverse people, but it's not that diverse, really. Now Minneapolis has Somalis and Afro-Americans and Native Americans, and I'm surrounded by all these people that I don't know. I don't know their history, I'm not friends with them, but I have to be, so I try to have lunch with them, I try to expose myself to them, and then that rational fear can go away and be replaced by discourse, which is what political discussion is all about. So I think what you said was very important, because it's something we have to deal with. It's not going to go away, and it's been with humanity as long as it existed, because we are afraid of what's new, and that's normal. But we are better than that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Perhaps we might come back a little bit to the question of fusion of identities, to kind of shaping something new. I mean, the points that you pointed out, or that were pointed out, really important ones. The fear that this kind of fear that we have somehow of that what we don't know, and the fear, this stupid fear of being killed in a terroristic act instead of being killed in a car accident or something else. Something we really should think about, ask ourselves, what are we afraid of? And so, why are we? But as far as, the fusion idea, I mean, I don't want to kind of rebuild this melting pot idea. I still think there is one thing that we should still make a difference. We speak about migration on the one hand side, then may say refugee or immigrant or immigrant. We might also make the distinction between those who want to be here and want to come, and those who actually don't want to come to Germany or to the States, who come here because they feel safer. And when we think about integration, assimilation, fusion, whatever we might call that, I think the main distinction must be, is this a person who wants to be here, or is it the person who does not want to be at the place who he's born at or raised or grown, and what the cultural luggage he has with him, he still carries with him. So,
maybe I've spoken a lot, but just briefly, maybe when because you just used the term melting pot for the United States.
no, the old discussion.
The old discussion, melting pot versus salad bowl. To what extent do the ingredients truly mix, or do they coexist and just still make for a nice, consumable, digestible food? And I think the principle, coming back to what I said earlier, needs to be that people want to get along with each other. If you have that determination, I believe you can get there. If you are too burdened and sometimes even too strong an identity based on your own history is not helpful. Coming back all the time to, like the Serbs do with the Kosovo and the fight, I mean, that should be a discussion of the past. Or the Irish having their holidays going back to whatever and who they beat, at least to Germans after World War II. This is not a discussion we like to have. We feel maybe in different sequence, but we feel, I would argue, as much German as European. And I consider myself a global citizen, then a European, and then a German. And I belong to those who have what I consider now a very healthy patriotism. I like to sing the German national anthem in public. I'm not afraid of doing so. I don't think it shows any wrong nationalism, for instance. And I think it is important to all the true patriots to not permit the false patriots to occupy this form of being proud of your country.
I can't resist using your term fusion in a literal sense. The rate of marriage between groups is increasing steadily over the years, and we're fusing.
Sorry. Just. Yeah. That's all.
Well, obviously, this whole notion of identity, there was an organization before the war, the German citizens of Jewish origin, and of course after 1933, that was changed to Jews who live in Germany. So it was obviously a very, deliberate reorientation of the notion of identity. But I was just going to say, in this era when, as you say, interracial, biracial, transgender, I mean, the whole question of identity is in such a chaotic state, and every day there are new front page headlines of something relating to how you define yourself, how you identify yourself, who is going to put a label on you, and what right do they have to do that when your own internal feelings are the ones that matter. This is a discussion that at the moment I don't think has a conclusion, but stand by.
It's interesting that the Census Bureau, when they do their biannual census, used to have a simple box, are you white, black, I think Asian. They've had to gradually expand those choices. In the last census, they added a box saying other. And more people now are checking the box other. If your father, sorry?
Male, female, other.
Well, I'm thinking more about racial, but yeah, that's the next step now is gender identity. But if your mother is Asian and your father is German or some other combination, what are you? Are you Asian? Are you white? You're other. And so more and more people are checking that box. And I think it's really fascinating that we're getting more and more away from the pure racial identities and saying, well, I'm a little of everything. I'm a mixture. So I am other. Now the next step, you're right, is gender. At some point we'll have a box saying other for gender. Do they have one now?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know. So again, the blurring of identities. But get back to and I'm sorry, I think in terms of businessman, because that's my world, it really is not an issue. I'm talking to a web development firm in Thailand. I'm talking to a marketing firm in Japan. I'm talking to an automotive designer in Netherlands or Brazil. It's irrelevant. The borders melt away. With communications now, I can be on the internet or a webinar or a Skype conversation, and it doesn't really matter where you are. And the borders have erased. Everyone speaks English, for better or for worse. That's now the international language for darn near everything. So we're all speaking English. We're all in different time zones, but who cares? One guy's at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm at 5 in the afternoon. No one cares. And those identities are blurred. It's just getting a deal done, getting a project done, getting a task done.
I think the business world is actually an interesting example because you see that trade has been something that is a unifying force. There's a common interest, but I think in some ways, like sociologically and psychologically, we're as societies aren't as fast. Like because it's not as easy because if we're not business people, but we interact as people in society, I think we don't have that advantage that business people have to see something that unites you, right? If you have a deal to cut, great, you have a common interest, you speak the same language. But I think as people, we can't catch up quite with the identity shifts and the who are we and what are we against the others because we still live in national entities. But then we're not. So it's an interesting thing to me. I think we're trying to, as humans, we're much more like emotionally driven than rationally, and I think that's a big challenge. And the challenge in that is just looking at, as I said before, looking at that and seeing how we can actually deal with that rationally and not have the emotional side be the driving force in those discussions.
You make a very good point about what unites us. It's certainly business, but I'll give you another example, that's the military. I served in the military for 4 years, and it hit me right from day one that the military is the most integrative force in our culture. We had black admirals and generals before we had black CEOs, and black presidents and black senators. The military forced you to integrate because you have a common goal, a common purpose to not get shot, and it unites you. And the military has been a tremendous, powerful force, going back to Harry Truman, to integrate our society long before society itself integrated. So that's another example of a common purpose, a mutual force.
I happen to be in the nursing profession for 35 years, and I would say that the health profession was probably right there with business and the other, because it didn't really make much difference what that person was in the bed. You know, he might be a very, very wealthy person, or he might be anybody, somebody from the street, or whatever his nationality, didn't really make any difference.
All right, you might think I'm teasing, but I'm not, because I think there's a deeper question in this. I'm looking at page 7 of German Life, and it's an ad for lederhosen and dirndls. Have you seen second-generation Bulgarians or Turks or Africans wearing dirndls and lederhosen at festivals in Germany? That would be a sign of, I have taken on a separate identity despite me not looking like the traditional. Have you seen that?
I'm all for dirndls, believe me.
Well, this throws up an interesting question. I am from the north of Germany, and I had a lederhosen, like I guess maybe even Yogi had a short lederhosen until I was 10, I believe. Simply because it was practical, my mother didn't have to wash it, you know. And but it is not customary.
No, it's festive. So.
Yeah, no, but even not festive in the north to wear that type of traditional dress. It is the lederhosen and the dirndl are identified with Germany, and I have no major problem with that. I have only a minor problem with that because it only is representative of Bavaria. So when I participate in the von Steuben parade, because it's not only in New York, the other second city is Chicago that has a Steuben parade. And von Steuben is, of course, was a great German general who's coming back to the army. I agree with that. I have friends in the army, in the US Army. And what not many people know is that the manual, the drill manual that he wrote was taken up by West Point and was used until the 1830s, 1840s. And what also not many people know, now everybody is crazy about the Hamilton play, but I'm working with the Newberry Library in Chicago, because I pointed out that there must be exchange of letters between Baron von Steuben and Hamilton, and there actually is, because they both served in the army as generals. So when I go to the Steuben parade in Chicago, I dress in traditional Bavarian costume just to satisfy the expectations of the audience of some German identity. But I could just as well go like this, or like Bruce Rauner, the governor, without a tie and in jeans and just a coat. So I have a minor problem, as I say, with that, and we are trying to correct the image to find something which is more representative than pretzels and lederhosen of Germany, but that has caught, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad, you know.
I will happily add something to that. So I agree with what you said. I am not from Bavaria, so I would never.
She's actually from a neighboring town.
We found out we're from like a similar town, which makes us an in-group, right? We can relate to each other because we have a common heritage.
Quelle by Bielefeld.
Quelle by Bielefeld. So, but lederhosen, you would never see me in dirndl because simply in Bielefeld that's not what you wear. But unfortunately, the latest movement is that Oktoberfests have spread all across Germany. And even where I last lived in Hamburg and Lüneburg, we had annual Oktoberfests to my chagrin. But I have seen Turks wear those because why not? Everybody, I think the Oktoberfest in Lüneburg should not be something that we do. But
I've even seen Americans dressed in lederhosen.
Yeah, and I think that's not something you should be pursuing because I think it's not Germany, it's Bavaria. We are a federal country, right? So here's where you get
it's more the aesthetics of it. I'm sorry, I have to.
No, you're good. I'm done.
What a finish! And now I just imagine you, Herbert, with a dirndl. I mean, that would be just the top of it. Anyway, there was a question back there. There was a question. Excuse me. Sorry.
Ladies.
The last one.
Second last, maybe Dennis had also his finger up. Dennis Varta from New York.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a few comments to the last comments that have been going around here. It's, first of all, very interesting. You have 4 German-born people sitting on the panel, one that grew up here, and the other 3, a very number of years being here, Esther being the most recent. And so I just wanted to give my perspective from the other end of it as an American-born, living in Germany for nearly 30 years, as our moderator said. The last 6 years that I lived there, I did live in Bavaria, and I do own several dirndls now, but they're absolutely right. I never owned one before I ended up in Bavaria. But a point I wanted to make that addresses something you were talking about earlier. When I first went to Germany, I didn't speak one word of German. I was contracted to go over there as a musician, and I was determined to integrate myself. I wanted to learn the language, and somebody, I think it was you, perhaps said earlier that you really can't understand the culture until you speak the language. And that is very, very true. I became fluent in German, and the better I became at it, the more I could understand the German culture and integrate myself. And I did feel at home there for quite a long while. Another interesting thing was, yes, there was a lot of still military presence over there. They have their separate communities, and very, very few of them, with very few exceptions, did learn the language. And okay, it's not that they have to integrate there, it's their own community. But you will see a lot of that there in Germany, whether it's a Turkish community there or a Turkish community here. And, you know, I do think if you're going to go to another country, you can take your customs with you, but yes, you should learn the language, you should learn the culture and try to become part of that. Otherwise, why did you go there? You know, it's just, I don't have a solution for it either. It's just an observation that I made after so many years over there, that learning the language and adapting the customs really helped me to understand the German culture, which was very, very valuable the longer I was there. I just wanted to add that. So, thank you.
Thank you. After World War II, almost all U.S. soldiers occupied only one part of Germany, Bavaria. It would be almost like if we lost a war and the German soldiers came here and occupied Texas, and everybody would send home a Texas hat. Bavaria was very happy with the fact that we adopted those lederhosen and so on. But it is a known fact that there is still a lot of jealousy, is probably a good word, between the various states in Germany. It has existed since time began, and it still exists. And so there still is a lot of, some bitterness between the states. It's going away, but it still is there. But anyway, the only people who are happy about our wearing lederhosen are the Bavarians. It is not a German suit.
Thanks for that good last point. Anyway, thank you on the podium. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your interest.